Let's go from Marco Rubio to another Republican primary candidate, Rand Paul. Rand Paul is now making promises that he obviously can't keep. One of the things that Rand Paul has been saying as part of his very new, his 1 week old platform for Republican candidate for president is that if he were elected, he would immediately end NSA mass surveillance. He said, quote, "The president created this vast dragnet by executive order, and as president on day one, I will immediately end this unconstitutional surveillance. I believe we can have liberty and security, and I will not compromise your liberty for a false sense of security. Not now, not ever." Let's forget for a second that it was a president, but not this president, who started most of these surveillance programs. It was George W. Bush. President Obama certainly having a role in scaling up and reauthorizing the Patriot Act and NSA surveillance, no doubt. But the Obama blaming element of it is a little bit tired, to be quite frank. Let's talk about whether he could do this, right? Saying your phone records are yours, the phone records of law-abiding citizens are none of the damn business of the government. This is grandiosity at its most grandiose. The idea that Rand Paul can just shut this whole thing down is absurd, particularly since much of it was going on without the White House's involvement or knowledge in the first place. This is such a blatant promise that Rand Paul couldn't possibly keep.
Two things. First, it's not too different from Mitt Romney promising every college graduate in the country a job.
Right.
I think, but it's commonplace now for presidential candidates to make promises they can't keep. But also at the same time, I think that a lot of people don't understand that the president can't just do anything they want. I think that's why so many people hate Obama, because they think he can just snap his fingers and make anything happen. And it's not that simple.
Should we be reinterpreting campaign promises now simply as desires? So when we hear President Obama say, "I will shut down Guantanamo Bay," should we just say, okay, that's how he has to say it, but what he means is he would like to shut down Guantanamo Bay? When Rand Paul says, "I will shut down NSA surveillance on day one of my presidency," should we be synthesizing that and saying, okay, what he means is if he could simply do whatever he wanted with no oversight whatsoever, this is what he would like to do?
It's gotten to the point where that's how I interpret it. It's just an idea. So I think it would be, I think it would be good for voters to interpret it that way.
The problem, of course, is that it makes us question whether he knows what he even would have the ability to do or authority to do as president. More pragmatic, maybe, would have been to say, listen, I would push for a new law that requires companies to disclose data surveillance. If they don't, they can be held liable for it as if data were stolen because it needs to be disclosed. Let's declassify the surveillance techniques, not necessarily all of the data. A lot of people are against this type of surveillance, in part because they don't know what is the policy, what is the technique being used. So we would have, I would have at least a much different reaction if I heard Rand Paul making more pragmatic and specific promises, like some of these.
And that would have been a huge mistake, because you just introduced nuance. And when you do that, you lose everybody. So what he did was very simple. It was to the point, and it was a powerful statement. And I guess, he thinks that's what works, and maybe it does.
There's no chance that Rand Paul is actually going to be the next president of the United States. So most of this discussion might be moot, but it's still relevant for whoever does become the next president. On the discussion of NSA surveillance, tell us specifically what you would do, and mandatory disclosure, not of the data, but of who is collecting data, right? Is Verizon giving your data to the government? Disclose that. And also, what are the techniques being used for data collection? Just so everybody knows what the playing field is. That I think is not too much to ask.